Congressman, are you familiar with the Insurrection Act?
This is the moment it all falls apart because he clearly has no idea what he's talking about. So Michael Knowles exposes this congressman, and he does it on Piers Morgan. This was 2 days ago.
Yeah, there is this raging argument now about whether it is constitutional, whether it is lawful for the President of the United States to do what Trump is now rolling out in places like Chicago. What is your view of that?
It's not only not legal, it's not only unconstitutional.
If it's not legal, how come it's been done multiple times?
If federal government can give the grants so that local police, law enforcement can hire more people. Right now, they are severely understaffed.
And this was a big mistake because he's admitting that local authorities are understaffed, underfunded, which means they would need assistance from the federal government. So he's kind of making the argument for Michael.
They don't have the resources they need to keep our cities safe. Now, in a long-term process...
But aren't you answering your question? I mean, aren't you
I think you're
making
the point.
Right. I mean, in a way, what you just said is the rationale for doing it, isn't it? I mean, they're under-resourced. No. They don't have enough people. They can't control the crime. Donald Trump is recognizing this, and he's doing something about it. And I'm curious about how many regular Americans who live in some of these very crime-ridden inner cities in America are really as opposed to it as you sound like you are. Because, if you've got a lot of crime going on around you and the police are woefully under-resourced, why would you object to seeing some troops on the streets to just try and restore order and perhaps send a real message to criminals?
See, putting military and reserves all over America.
But that's not what's happening. This is not all over America. These are specific places where it is deemed necessary.
Congressman, are you familiar with the Insurrection Act?
He has no idea what he's talking about.
Yes, I am. And this
so what do you think that's for? You said that this was illegal. You said it was not unconstitutional and illegal for the federal government to send National Guard into cities and states. What do you think the Insurrection Act is for?
And notice he doesn't answer the question. And that's a very important question.
Well, look, this is a issue that the local government should be handling. What is the answer to
I don't think you understand the Insurrection Act.
Right, to Michael's... well, let me just ask, Congressman, do you actually know what the Insurrection Act says?
Pierce sends his blood in the water. He's going to pounce.
Yes, but this is...
hang on. What does it say?
Well, look, what we saw happen in January 6th in the Congress, that's insurrection.
He's not asking examples of past insurrections. He's asking, what does the Insurrection Act say?
That's not the question. The question is, are you familiar? Obviously, the government is citing the Insurrection Act as the empowerment to do what it's doing. Are you familiar with what the Insurrection Act allows?
Yes, I am. But look, this president has used all kinds of excuses to break the law. This president has used...
No, but that is the law. So what is the law, Congressman? You say you're familiar with the Insurrection Act, but you don't seem to be able to describe what it does, and you're actually contradicting it. So what do you think the Insurrection Act does?
Look, the issue here is that we need our cities safe.
Trying to escape now. He does not want to answer this.
Americans want...
Well, Congressman, with all due respect, that's not an answer to the question. I mean,
can you lay out what you believe allows Donald Trump to act so unlawfully?
Hang on, Jack, I'm going to come to you very shortly. But just to be clear, Congressman, it's a pretty simple question that Michael posed, which is the government are citing the Insurrection Act as the rationale and the legal tool by which they can do what they're doing. You said it's illegal and wrong, and they shouldn't be doing it. But you seem to be struggling to explain what the Insurrection Act actually is. And Michael, quite rightly, is saying, well, can you just tell us?
Well, whatever it is, when the National Guards are picking up trash and the National Guards are watering the flowers, that is not Insurrection Act.
Okay, if you're claiming picking up trash is not the Insurrection Act, then surely you know what the Insurrection Act is.
And that's not what this is meant to be.
But do you know what it is, the act?
Yeah.
What is it?
When there is an insurrection, the government has powers to use military, use reserve to address those situations.
It's an act that has to do with insurrections. When there's an insurrection, the government can act. You can deduce that just from the title alone, but it's a little bit more complicated than that.
And this is clearly not the situation here. What we need to do is empower local law enforcement.
Okay, Michael, your response to that?
I think the congressman might be a little bit confused because he said that the federal government is breaking the law by sending the National Guard in to restore order to the cities where crime has spiraled out of control, where there's obviously a violation of federal law with all of the illegal aliens running about. And that is actually what it's for. We have a federal government in order to step in when the local and state governments fail.
This has happened a number of times in history. Eisenhower did it. Kennedy did it. Last time it was conducted was Bush in the LA riots, I believe.
And so this has been used many, many times, not merely to restore order if there's some violent revolution, but even, for instance, to desegregate schools.
There are going to be times when local law enforcement refuses to adhere to a new law, for example, or something like such as school integration. Federal government has to step in, which is what Eisenhower did.
This has been used many, many times over the course of American history. There's nothing illegal about it. And in fact, what President Trump is doing right now is one of the clearest and most just uses of the Insurrection Act when you have cities that are failing, that in your own words, cannot enforce the law, are under-resourced, and are falling into disorder.
He made a big mistake when he laid out that argument.
So I think you've made a good argument for what President Trump is doing.
And that's checkmate, game over. Michael Knowles then moves on to this guy and just completely eviscerates him as well.
It seemed to me the congressman actually, maybe inadvertently, gave the explanation for why Trump feels justified in using the Insurrection Act. Because if you agree that the law enforcement in these very crime-ridden cities is failing and under-resourced, then why shouldn't a government use the Insurrection Act to put troops on the ground and try and restore proper order?
Well, because I don't think the intention is to restore proper order. Donald Trump and his entire administration has made it clear that they'd be happy to see unrest come out of sending in the National Guard.
Okay, that's a big claim. What are you basing that on?
Where are you getting that from? Hold on. Before you make you made an argument.
I think if you would allow me to finish my point,
the Trump administration wants disorder and has admitted this. What's your evidence?
You don't like to hear people speak out, and now I'm delivering a point that you don't seem to like, and you want to silence me. That's what this administration does. It's okay.
I'm just asking for your evidence
today.
Now, Jack, to be clear, you made a statement that the Trump administration actively wanted disorder, and Michael, I think, understandably, because I would ask the same thing. Where is the evidence?
It has been reported.
Where is the evidence that they wanted disorder?
It has been reported that this administration sees it as a win.
Oh, I see. It's been reported by media. Therefore, that must be what they think.
When all of the photos that I've seen are just like people in T-Rex costumes hanging out and going to the farmer's market.
All areas are not going to be the same. If there's a consolidated riot, you can go outside the perimeter of that riot and take pictures of people with flowers and it's going to look fine.
If you thought that law enforcement was the answer to this problem, Donald Trump wouldn't be cutting the budget of police across the country to the tune of billions of dollars. Like, that wouldn't be happening. So you don't really have a
increase the law enforcement budget.
First of all, that's not true, which is what just took place in his budget.
He did. That was the big beautiful bill. That was one of the key provisions of the big beautiful bill.
That is absolutely untrue.
That the states are in charge of their local law enforcement. If they choose to allocate funds in an irresponsible way, you can't put that on Trump.
Jack, to be clear, Jack, look, to be clear, he either increased federal spending in that bill on law enforcement or he didn't. And it does appear from Michael and from the Democratic congressman that you're just wrong. So do you want to take an opportunity to maybe walk that back?
I do not.
A big chunk of that was ICE.
Well, you'd rather double down on a falsehood.
I'd say I think that I'm willing to double down on the fact that Donald Trump has made it difficult for police officers across this country to do their jobs, and he doesn't actually care about them.
Notice he goes back to Donald Trump's intentions, which we cannot really know because we cannot mind read.
Your argument is that the big beautiful bill did not increase law enforcement funding at the federal level.
Donald Trump has cut again and again.
Congressman, could you please clarify for our confused liberal friend here? You can just admit you made a false claim on air. It's okay. People make false claims. We could just move on. But you're doubling down on a easily disproven
when even the Democratic congressman says you're wrong.
Maybe that's what you've made your living.